Redlifter. And let's begin by saying, absolutely, the reason we've come to talk to agencies is we are looking to work with agencies as a partner to help us talk to e-commerce brands, to help us work with e-commerce brands. What I've got for you for this first bit is essentially our pitch. When I do a talk, when I do a pitch to retailers, this is what we take them through. But what I'm going to do is add a little bit of sort of meta commentary as we go through, so you guys understand a bit more about what's going on. And so, if you like the summary of what Redlifter is about rethinking how retailers use promotions and discounts, offers, whatever you want to call them. They essentially mean the same thing to us: an incentive. Something you put in front of someone to get them to do something, not do something differently, whatever it is. They are an incredibly powerful tool for retailers. They're one of the big levers they've got. You can do lots of little tweaks, but there are only certain things that make a really big difference. And that's why retailers use them. They use these big discounts to generate extra conversions, clear stock when they find themselves in that situation. What we're trying to do is say there's a different way to use them and think about them, where you can still get those improvements in performance, increases in AOV, conversion, etc. But we can mitigate some of the downsides, and the downsides are the damage to brand and margins. So I'll go through that a little bit as we go through these slides. So yeah, promotions, really old concept. 150 years ago, promotions were first used in retail. Originally metal tokens that you could hand in and you could get a free gift or you could get money off. And then over time, paper vouchers you could cut out. And now it's all little codes that you type in or that can be auto-applied at checkout. So the delivery mechanism has changed because of the technology, but the way retailers use them hasn't changed. They use them because they're heading towards the end of a reporting period and they're not going to hit their target, or they've got stock to clear. There's a number of scenarios where they just use them absent-mindedly when they need to improve performance. But that causes lots of problems. And this is how an offer essentially works. There's a bunch of people who are willing to want to buy your thing. At the price point it's on sale for, some people will buy it. Some people are comfortable with that. But if you reduce the price, more people fall into that bucket of being able to buy down to the minimum price, which is where, you're not making any money, so you don't want to drop the price any lower than that. And using the offer basically pulls more people into that orbit. So the more you can understand about who those people are, the better things will work for you. There's also another element to offers, which is the psychological element. So the fact that something is on discount, has a promotion, encourages people to buy it. There's people out there who just look for promotions and discounts and deals. And so if they find one, they're more likely to buy anyway. So there's a couple of sort of psychological effects. There's a reduction in price, but there's also the fact that people feel like they're getting a deal. And that's why they work. We did some research with IMRG, who are the UK e-commerce association. So they have a panel of like 200, I think it's 240 retailers. And so what they do, which is really great, so this isn't survey data. There's lots of problems with survey data when you ask people what they do, is they don't often tell you, or they tell you the wrong thing, or they're full of biases. This is actual, they pull the data from the retailers, from their analytics, and say, okay, what's actually going on? And so they pulled a year's worth of data and saw that, almost around half of all revenue generated items sold transactions were sold with discounted products. That can either be what's sometimes referred to as marketing discount, so hey, it's 20% off everything, special one off, or products being reduced in price, product discount. Sometimes brands break those into two things, or sometimes they think about them together. But yeah, half of the time they're being used in order to drive sales. And they do work. You see the average item price sold when a discount is used is actually higher. So the discounts are encouraging people to spend more money. So that shows you the power of them, why they work, and why retailers use them, because they can be really effective. But yeah, the downside is that damage to brand and margins. And when we speak with retailers, the margin is the short-term thing they're worried about, but often the brand is the bigger, longer-term thing they're worried about, because especially, for example, we were with Radley, and I'll get into some examples of our work with them, and they're a reasonably premium brand. They really worried about, yes, they were worried about margin damage, but they were more worried about the damage to their brand in the long term, that they're seen as a discounter, they're overusing discounts, they're stuck in a cycle of just discounting all the time in order to hit their targets, they set those unreasonable expectations. Some research, we partnered with an organization called Two Visions Research. They didn't do this research with us, but we partnered with them to talk about it. 62% of consumers wait for discounts before buying. We are training people to wait for discounts at the right moment. And BCG did some research themselves. They did this article which kind of acted as a kind of the origin of us, because they kind of talked about the idea of smarter promotions. Is there a more intelligent way of using promotions to make them more efficient and profitable? And they kind of said that all promotions being used, their estimate was about 30 to 40% of them are not being used efficiently or profitably at the moment. So the question becomes, what can you do? How can you start using promotions more intelligently? And what we're trying to establish, essentially, if we go back to this diagram, is, you want to know who these people are at either end and say, can we figure out who should get an offer? So who gets the offer, who doesn't, and then what offer should they receive? So often it's more powerful when we talk about it to say you're probably showing offers right now to people who don't need one. They would have bought at full price, but they saw there was a discount. The classic thing is something like the email sign-up discount, and so they bought with it. So can you make a better decision about who sees a discount, which would also get you around that problem of, setting expectations of discounts, because people don't necessarily know they are definitely going to get one. And then what is the right discount? So if you're showing everyone 10% off, would you have got the same result if you'd shared slightly less? So if you'd shown them 5%, would you have actually got a fairly similar result, but it would have cost you less money? Or if you'd shown $10 off rather than 10% off, would that have worked out better? All kinds of questions. So what can we do to understand those things better? And then essentially, how can we optimize it as well as possible? And that's where the technology comes in. So it comes in a better understanding of targeting and a better understanding of optimization. So targeting in terms of who sees an offer, and when and what context did they see that offer, and optimization in terms of, we always frame it when we talk to an e-commerce brand. Everything they do is essentially an optimization process. It's a test and learn. Everything they're doing in terms of tweaks they make to their website, the way they optimize their ads, the way they optimize email flows, whatever it is a constant test and learn, optimize it, make it work better. And so can you do a better job of that with promotions, which typically you've just used when you've suddenly stuck one out when you've had a last minute thought, and can you target them more effectively? And that is what RevLifter attempts to do. So targeting is based around the data we can collect. So what we do is we put a tag on a retailer's website, which is just like a Google Analytics tag, something like that. So it's what that tag is doing is two things. It's collecting data and it's serving our offers. We have a Shopify plugin which installs it, so that's nice and easy. We also have a BigCommerce plugin that does this as well. Those two kind of installations are super easy. We can do a manual install, which is where we put the actual tag on into Google Tag Manager or something. That can be a bit more complicated because it really depends on we're obviously trying to collect things like product data, basket data, transaction data. And it's much harder if that's in a bit of a messy state. We meet brands who kind of say, we built our website custom 10 years ago. It was built by someone in-house, and you just look at it and it's a complete mess, and it's like, we can't really understand that data. So things are in good shape, Shopify, BigCommerce. We're also working on a Magento plugin. Data that's in a good order means we can pick it up. And these are the kind of signals we're looking at: is traffic source. So where are people coming from? That can tell you quite a lot about what they're doing. So, if someone's come from search, the classic example is always search. People using search have higher intent. I always, smart search providers love trotting this thing out, and I'm always a bit like, no shit, Sherlock, right? If you search for something, that's obviously what you're trying to find. And if you find it, you're in high intent to therefore go and buy it. But it's a fair point. So if someone's coming from certain SEO terms or whatever, or PPC ads where they've seen something that they're interested in, that's going to have higher intent. Or they might come from social media or whatever. And that's obviously, we can build rules around to target people around that. Whether people are new or returning is a really classic one. A lot of retailers focus on that. So whether it's the first time you've seen them or they've come before, obviously if they're a first-time customer or if they've bought before, in my opinion, there's a bit of a false dichotomy around those things. You really just want to sell things to people, but there are things you can do differently depending off the first time or the second time you've seen them. Funnel stage. So classically, e-commerce retailers, e-commerce performance people and marketing people see things in the funnel in terms of people coming to product pages, then going into basket, and then going to checkout. So understanding where they are in that funnel, obviously as they get further on, they have higher intent and we get more data about them. So that can tell you quite a lot about what's going on. What products they've browsed, and that can be other product data like what category is it, what brand is it. We've had retailers come to us and sort of say like, we had a sports retailer specifically who kind of said like essentially their business model is to sell Nike and Adidas products, but when people come to the site, they kind of want to bait and switch them to their own brand, because although Nike and Adidas bring people in, they make far less margin, whereas they sell a much higher margin on their own products. So it's like, how can you get people in and then switch them? So understanding what people are interested in and what you can do with that, it can be incredibly useful. Location. So we have done some GeoIP targeting type campaigns. GeoIP is a bit of a moving feast about how reliable it is, but what we've done particularly with US customers is at state level, it can be pretty reliable. So if you wanted to do a campaign just for Texas, or a campaign, and I've got some examples of this where we did this campaign just targeting California, that's fairly reliable, and you can do sort of campaigns targeted and where people are. Basket value and products, what have they got in their baskets? Do they have a basket value above or below a certain amount? What kind of products have they got and what brands? What things have they added, taken out? How long have they had their basket for? I always use that example. Like, I'm one of those people who puts things in my basket and leaves them there for ages because I'm considering. It's like, I think I want this. High consideration purchases. People who do this a lot with very expensive purchases, put them in and then think about it a long time, leave it there, come back, and eventually on the 10th time they might buy it. So understanding how long they've had the basket for. And we're just collecting all this data. And there's lots of other signals as well. We're looking at how we take in other signals as well. Like, can we take data from CDP once we can identify somebody, once we've can understand who they are, because all this is happening anonymously to start off on a website. We're just collecting live data or in-session data. But obviously, if we can then connect that to data once we know who they are, because they've given us their email address, they've logged in, whatever it is, then you can start connect to CDP, CRM data, all that kind of thing. But we're always looking at what other data signals might be out there, and then evaluating how relevant is that data signal, how strong a signal is it of whether they're likely to buy or not. Again, that's a test and learn process of just understanding on a customer by customer basis, like, what does that tell you about whether they're likely to buy or not. And you can either start off by just creating segments based on these sort of rules. So that's nice and easy. We've had, for example, with Traffic Source, we had a customer who said, I want to target PPC traffic specifically. I'm paying a lot for my PPC traffic and we're not converting very well on it. Could we run a campaign that only appears to people who come from specific PPC campaigns when they land on the site? Yes, we could do that because, we're getting the tracking through. So we can just say, if they come with that tracking, they will see this offer versus they won't. Or, new versus returning, funnel stages, some obvious rule-based stuff you can do there. But all you can do more interestingly is if you analyze all this data and look for the patterns and kind of say, what we aim to do is work with the retailer and say, okay, over time, let's understand what signals tell us whether people are more likely to buy or not buy. And then you can start to look at things like intent. So this is an actual, how we sort of show intent to a customer. So there's this idea of, as you can see, in terms of volume, people with low intent are much higher. 98% of people who come to our website don't buy. So actually most people don't buy, and a much smaller number have high intent. We can understand who these people are and build them into segments and make that actionable. We can say, for example, you might want to exclude these very low intent users, or you might want to include only very high intent users, or you might want to include, what we all think is more interesting is that people in the middle. If they're very likely to buy, you don't want to show them an offer because they're very likely to buy without that offer. If they're very unlikely to buy, you don't want to show them an offer because it's a waste of time. They're not going to buy and they're just going to set an expectation of discounting. But it's those people in the middle who are slightly wavering where you do want to target those people and you want to find out what the right incentive is for them to buy. So it's giving the ability to say, predictive analytics essentially to say, we think these people are likely to buy, unlikely to buy, kind of might buy, might spend more, might spend less, and give those to retailers to use as actionable segments to then use in their for their promotions. And then the other end, as I say, the other end of it is the optimization. So this is where we're really testing and learning. So we can work out which groups of people we want to show an offer, not show an offer to. But then the question is, what's the right offer? What's going to achieve the goals of the retailer? Often when we're working with retailers, they're going in and they're thinking about things a bit too simply. So they just think like, we want to increase conversion, so we stick an offer on. And you say, well, actually, you want to go get a bit deeper into this. What are you actually trying to do? And it turns out often they're more interested in better AOV, or they're worried about CAC. And it's like, well, actually, are you measuring the right thing in order to? And if you're worried about margins, just worrying about your conversion rate isn't going to tell you much about that. So let's think about what you're actually trying to achieve and then work out how we can test and learn and figure out what would work. So there's a couple of things we can do in here. Offer sensitivity testing, we call it. That's where you run a test to say, well, how sensitive are people to an offer? How much variance do we get if we give people a bigger or smaller discount? Are these people who are very offer sensitive? And again, you could build a segment of those people and say, those bunch of people who are very sensitive to a discount versus people who aren't. And then also what we call promotional price testing. So this is kind of getting us into the world of, I always bring up the story, the dynamic pricing, a big famous example, the Oasis tickets. Oasis tickets went on sale. I think they were charging something like £130 a ticket. They had dynamic pricing set up on Ticketmaster. When people came through, because demand was so high, the ticket prices shot up. Now, the problem in that case was twofold. Number one, you had the wrong expectation of price, which really annoys people. But also, they set the initial price way too low. They clearly could have had the initial price much higher, set the right expectation, and then dropped it if demand was a bit low. That doesn't go down so badly. So we often say, like, if you want to figure out the right price for something, the better thing to do is start at a nice high price, and then we'll use promotional price testing to see if it's not selling at the volume you wanted, how much do we need to discount it by before the supply and demand gets to the level you want it to be. We worked with a company for a little bit who sold these sort of they were little horror soft toys, and those things sold like hotcakes. They sold loads of other stuff as well, but they sold loads and loads of these. And we just sort of said, not only do we think you should never discount these things, we think you should put the price of those up because everyone loves them and they're clearly selling in their droves. But there's lots of other stuff you're selling, huge amounts of your inventory that's really difficult to shift. Those are big opportunities for promotional price testing to say, well, how big a discount do we need to get to until you sell that off? If it's sat in your inventory and it's costing you money, that's working against you at the end of the day. So figuring out the other side, which is the product data versus the visitor data as well, is really important. This is an actual example as well of the kind of test we run. So email sign up is a classic one where retailers really vibe with this when we talk about this idea that, you stick on 10% off, 15% off for email sign up. People put it on. I don't know. I assume at some point in the past, some thought leader said you should all do this, and everybody does it, and no one ever thinks about it, like testing it, optimizing it, seeing what's happening, what's it doing to your performance. So one of the first things we often do is say, let's figure out what's going on with your email sign up. So we'll take over running your email sign up. We'll run a live test on it. We'll run different test amounts. We might say, let's show different email sign-up offers to different people. It's a really interesting one to run at abandonment, to say if someone's going to exit, hey, can we grab an email address? That can work quite effectively. But what we're looking at when we run this is not only the conversions, because I always do this live. People always get this wrong. I always say, like, which one do you think performed better in terms of email sign-ups? And people go, oh, maybe 10%. And I go, no, it's obviously 15%. It's always going to be the highest one that works best. But we're looking deeper than that and saying, okay, but how many of those people then go on to convert? How many people use the offer? What is the AOV of those people? Is it actually driving incremental revenue? So if you're offering this bigger offer, yes, that's going to get a lot more people on your email list, but are those people actually people you want on there because they're not actually going to buy, or they're going to buy with a discount? So let's run tests and see if we can make your email sign up work better. And we've been doing that with quite a few retailers. Flow Kayaks are a customer of ours, and we've been doing that with them. We've got an integration with Klaviyo. So we've literally, they were just using Klaviyo to serve the form. We've just taken over running that. We're still pushing the data into Klaviyo, but we're just figuring out, optimizing what is that offer on that email sign up that's actually delivering the value you want and the performance you want. And that's part of, as I say, ongoing test and learn, just to keep working. So after running 15, 10, 5, I think in this case, 10% won this test because it got the best email sign up rate versus balance of not giving away too much money. But then the next stage was, okay, let's do 8, 10, 12. Let's see what that kind of does. Maybe we could try the other things we suggest, to try offering free shipping if you sign up. Try doing a competition is often an interesting one, where you say, rather than getting a discount, every 100th customer might get it, or once a month we'll give a customer their order for free or something, which actually can cost you less money, but is still a strong incentive to get people to sign up. But yeah, it's just about testing things and seeing what works. So going to some examples. So Radley are a really great customer of ours. We've been working with them for a couple of years, and we've done lots and lots of stuff with them, and we're continuing to. So this is an example. So just running different exit campaigns at browse, basket, and checkout. So targeting people who are going to leave at each of those stages, trying to offer different offers at each of those stages, because as people get lower, the higher their intent is. So the lower an offer you need to offer them, but also saying, well, if we've got different segments at these points, if we overlay intent onto this, can we save some money by not showing exits to certain people, or showing them different exit campaigns, email signups, as I said, things like that. And this is the actual how we ran intent for them. They asked us just to exclude anyone 25% high intent. And what that did is it saved them 8% promotional costs. We've actually saved them about 10% now, and we continue to try and optimize that to save them more money. If you think about it, I always explain, like, if you think about it, you could just decide we're going to offer 20% off to everyone, but we're just going to offer that to 50% of the traffic that comes to our website and not the other half. And that would save you some money, but still give you conversion improvement. But what will be much smarter is to figure out who are the right people to show that to and who are the wrong people. But that's what we're doing. The real power, if you like, is more in saying, who do we not show this offer to? How many people do we not show the offer to? How is that saving them money? So one of the classic ones, there's some really specific discrete campaigns that work really well. So Control C is this idea. This works well for brands, particularly if they sell direct, but they also sell through channels. So they sell through other retailers or marketplaces. And what people will do is copy the product name from their website and then paste that into Google or Amazon. And they're just looking to get a cheaper price. What's really interesting about that is those people are high intent. They want to buy it. They just want to find the cheapest price they can. So at that point, we treat that as an intervention point. So we can pop up an offer there and say, hey, this is the exclusive product, or hey, we'll give you 10% off. That's the best price you're going to find anywhere, and try and get them to convert on the site. The good thing is when we tag the site, we can look at how much this behavior is happening because our technology can record that. So we can look at how many people are copying the product name to go and paste it somewhere else. That can be really powerful. And again, just an exit campaign, essentially a way of recapturing people. Invalid code offers is a really good way of this as well. This really gets to the heart of why RevLifter started, because this deals with this very specific problem of if you're a retailer and you've got the discount code on your checkout page, what people do is they see that and then immediately open a new tab, type John Lewis discount code into Google and see what comes up. For some reason, the Daily Mail must make a huge amount of money out of this because they have a big discount page. So you go on their page, there's a big load of codes listed. None of them work because they're old or they're invalid. They weren't fair codes to begin with. At this point, it's already causing you a massive problem because people are going off and they're suddenly distracted, and people get distracted really easily and you're breaking the experience. But if they do copy the code and come back and try and paste that in and it says this doesn't work, again, we can use that as an intervention point to say, sorry, your code didn't work. Here's one that does, or here's a promotion that you can use, or whatever the right intervention is. And at that point, again, you have high intent people because they do want to buy, they just want to see if they can find a cheaper price. We can intervene at that point, and without them having to go and use something awful like honey or whatever it is as well. Stretch and save campaigns, always a good idea, great way of cross-selling. What we try and do is, again, add a bit more intelligence to them. So this is the idea, hit this target and you'll trigger some kind of promotion. It might be free delivery, it might be a discount, whatever it is. What we try to do is really analyze the data and say, okay, where have you got a problem? Where does your basket value and conversion rate really start to go askew? So at some point, whenever we look at the retailer's data, their conversion rate at a high basket value starts to really drop. So we say, well, that's the point and probably we need to intervene and target that point specifically to say that's where you're having a drop off. And then at that point, we can say, okay, and the other thing we do is, for example, I always use this example. So for Flow Kayaks, who we work with, they sell kayaks. How many kayaks do you think people need to buy? Like one. You don't need to buy more than one kayak. Nobody needs to buy loads of kayaks, mate, unless you're a trade person who buys loads of kayaks. So you're not going to buy one kayak, add another kayak. But what you might do is buy, a life jacket, a paddle, some gloves, wetsuit, whatever it is. So it's about understanding that relationship and saying, this is where we need to intervene because your conversion rate isn't working well with your high basket value. But also, here are the things we can add. Here's a sensible next step in the target of stretch and save. Here's products. We can include product recommendations in it too that meet that and will help you get that basket value higher. And you can have these. You can have different stretch and saves for different audiences, for different products, depending on what people get in their basket. You can have them on a scale. So when people reach one target, another target appears. So there's lots and lots you can do with them. And again, test and learn to try and make sure you're driving the AOV improvements people want. And yeah, some product recommendations. We do standalone product recommendations as well, but we always say they tend to work a lot better if you've got some kind of offer working in them, whether it's a stretch and save or just if you buy this as well as this, you get a bit of a discount or whatever. Can be very powerful. Yeah, I wanted to include this. This is always just great GeoIP. So Club L, who one of our customers, they do a lot of these campaigns where, and this is where I feel like a 47-year-old man, which is exactly who I am, is they do all these kind of very specific campaigns targeted usually at young women in these particular areas. You go to a lot of these functions. So there's something called the White Party. Never heard of it before. It happens in the Hamptons, in that apparently people all dress up in white and go to very rich people dress in white and go to anyway, no idea. But what they asked us to do was say, we're going to run a Hamptons White Party campaign, and we only want to target the East Coast of the US. All right, fine, we can do that. In this case, the Kentucky Derby. Apparently people like to get dressed up and go to the Kentucky Derby. So we ran that only in Kentucky. Texas races, only in Texas. We did one for spring break as well, just in Florida, where they wanted to sell like very nice swimwear to women who wanted to go to spring break. So you can do these kind of quite specific things as well. Tying, Radley really said this to us. We did a case study with Radley, and one of the really positive things they said was that it's really made them rethink the way they use promotions, and they think about them much more strategically as part of their calendar. So now they're thinking, when they speak with us, they're thinking, right, Valentine's Day is coming up. What are we doing for Valentine's Day? We've got this new product range coming up. We've got this happening. We've got that happening. We've got these products we want to sell on. And so rather than just thinking about them desperately, they're really thinking about when do we want to use a promotion, for what, how can we, and we work with them to put together a plan to just keep that going throughout the year. So they're almost, we've kind of strategized, if you like, promotions. So they're actually using them far more in how their day-to-day performance works, rather than just thinking, oh crap, we're going to miss our sales target this quarter, let's stick a promotion on to see if we can hit it. And that's really, really positive. So we have this thing called the wallet as well I wanted to include. So we do, most of our stuff is like pop-ups, just appear there at the right moment, because it's about intervening at the right moment. But the wallet is more of a persistent experience. So it sits on the retailer's website. As they trigger offers, they drop into the wallet, so people can always open it again to get offers out. We do have quite a lot of retailers who say they get feedback from customers that say, oh, I triggered an offer, and I really want to buy with that discount, but it disappeared and I don't know how to get back to it again. It vanished. Or, I deleted the email that you sent me when I signed up that was 10% off, and I just did it. So it's like, well, we can just keep them there in the wallet, keep things in there so they can always open them and use them if they want to. But the also great thing about that is it creates this area of real estate on their page. So marketing teams, there's often in big companies, particularly big retailers, there's a squabble over their website real estate. So it's not always fully in control of the e-commerce team and the marketing team. Merchandising have a say, IT have a say. So it gives them this area which is totally in their control. So they can decide what goes in there. They can put things like, hey, we just launched a new product. We're doing a sale. We've got we just launched Klarna. A lot of people want to shout about that and say, you can now pay in 3 installments. They can just drop all that content in there. We've got this new guide to how to use our product, whatever. They can drop that in there, and it gives them a nice little marketing area. And what we typically find is, you can measure the impact of the specific things you put in there, but also when people engage with the wallet, they're more likely to buy, because that shows they're a bit more engaged as well. So there's lots of nice signals it gives you about people's experience with retail. And these are some examples of some of the cards we ran for Radley over the course of a year. Yeah, clearance, Klarna, 5% off for first order, new in, all that kind of stuff. Whatever they want, they can put anything they want in there. So it's a fully controllable kind of content area. It Luggage, one of our customers as well. It Luggage is really interesting. Again, you get into these retailers with specific use cases. So what they do is they have everything comes in sets. So everything comes in small, medium, large bag as a luggage retailer. But what people do is come and buy just one. And they're always like, but we're going to have to break it apart, sell one, and then we've got 2 left. And you just have to hope people buy the other 2. So the challenge they always have is, can we just sell more sets than solo ones? And so it's about trying to incentivize that as much as possible. But what we did with them, this was a new first customer offer, and 5, 10, 15% off. As I said, classic test, ABC test, and saw what impact that had on conversion rate and AOV. So we ran that. In terms of partnership models, we have, because this is what we're here for, we have a referral model. So you bring us a customer, you get a bunch of money from us. We work on a managed service basis. What we find working with retailers is, I think, to be honest, I have a slight opinion on this. I think the days of SaaS are slowly disappearing, especially with AI agents and things like that. Because people don't have a lot of time. They already have to optimize their ads, their email flows, their on-site experience, all this. Giving them another thing where they have to press some buttons and have to figure it out doesn't go down very well. So we're doing it as a managed service, and what we want to do over time is make that more and more automated with wizards and AI parts that sort of guide people through the process of saying, well, what are you trying to achieve? Here's what we understand about your data. Here's the kind of offer you could run. But the moment it's fully managed. So we have a team in-house who sort of bring people in and kind of suggest things, look for insights in the data, suggest campaigns. If you bring customers to us and we work on that basis, we would share the data with you that they give us. There's lots and lots of valuable insights that come out of the data we collect, because it's telling you lots about what people are coming to the site, what they're doing, what they're interested in, and we share that and obviously work with the customer in coordination with you. We're also, the great news is we're a startup, so we're open to offers as well. So a clue scale in there. But basically, if you think like we want feedback from agencies and retailers about what we can do, how we can work better, what kind of things would you like to see from us? How can we work more effectively together? So we're open to those kind of conversations, absolutely, about particularly if you want to bring us a whole bunch of customers or whatever, like how we can make sure that all works as well as possible for everyone. And we provide all kinds of support. We can do marketing for you. I do all kinds of webinars and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. We've got slideware and video demos and a demo store and lots of examples of how our product works. And you can give people examples of how it does. And we provide all those services. Our services include designing the offers, running the analytics, coming up with the campaigns, running specific projects, integrations, all that kind of stuff. We all do in-house as well. So yeah, that is the end of my slides. So I think at that point, it would be good to say, hey, I should have said at the beginning, there'll be loads of time for questions. But hey, if you've got any questions or discussion points or anything you'd like to talk about, that's often a better way to guide what I tell you about. So if there's any questions or anything anyone has, this would be a good moment to get into that.
Brilliant. Well, just before everyone jumps in with their questions, a big thank you for that. I think there was loads of food for thought. You've definitely got me thinking from two sides. I run a branding agency, that's the house, and don't necessarily do the e-commerce side, but do consider discounting to clients or trying to build the package we put together rather than putting a discount on. But from agency folk point of view, definitely for the events, there are opportunities for discounting, particularly through the mailing list, as you've mentioned. People who do sign up to that will get the early discount. So I always consider that. But so it's a risky move sometimes because it sets expectations, as you say, and people that think a discount will come every single time. Not always, but it is something to manage and keep in mind.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. So I often get that question from retailers about, well, obviously you want us to buy RevLifter, but is there anything we can do now? And it's like, yeah, you can, because you've already got a lot of data in your CRM and your CDP. If you start thinking about what segments can we build it up, and obviously if you send it in an email, that is an exclusive way of delivering an offer because people aren't going to see it in general. It's just going to arrive in an email or through other channel you want to use. So there are some things you can do right now if you just start thinking in a different way. Obviously, we would also love to help you optimize those things as well. And the point is, we can provide that engine to make those decisions, and that can be the really valuable bit. But yeah, there's absolutely things you can already do if you just have a bit more time and think about it in the right way.
Yeah, but you're 100% right. It's about understanding the customer, isn't it? I mean, in my sense, agency folk, I tend to know most people who are going to come to the event. So I'm individually thinking, okay, who are they? Are they appropriate for the event? Is them being there a good thing necessarily? What sort of discount could incentivize that? But you're doing the same, obviously, at scale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's often how I explain. Yeah, the advantage is it's the scale and the automation of that decision making of saying, because you could, if you a real world physical example would be someone comes into your shop and you haggle with them on a one-to-one basis, but that isn't scalable to thousands of people coming to your website every day. We're trying to make that scalable so that it works for you and give you. It's a really interesting. We have a lot of discussions about how much control versus automation retailers want, and I think the reality we always arrive at is different retailers are going to want different amounts of control and different amounts of automation, how happy they are to leave an AI to make decisions about who gets an offer or not. So we're trying to build something very flexible. So it's like, it's up to you if you want to approve everything or if you're happy to just say, and the longer we work with the retailer, the more happy they generally are then to say, I'm happy to leave it to make decisions because I'm comfortable with the decisions it's making. It's not just, obviously the worry is it's suddenly going to give loads of people 50% off randomly. And it's like, no, we'll make sure that won't happen. So yeah.
But it's great. All that profit that's sitting on the table and not being taken is now available. So it's a win as things get going. Okay. Anyone else got any questions for Dan or anything to add?
Yeah, I had a question, Dan. That was super interesting. Thanks for presenting that. And I could definitely relate to the email discount pop-up. I think I've been trained well now. When I go to buy something, I'm like waiting for that, like 10% off. Okay, why not? I was going to buy that anyway, like you said.
Yeah.
But you get a discount. One thing I noticed, like you obviously use a lot of data signals on the input side, and traffic source is an important one. Are you doing much with sort of LLM traffic? Are you treating that any differently than like Google or search engine traffic? And so, what sort of stuff are you doing there?
Yeah, really interesting question. So we haven't seen, a lot of the retailers haven't seen a huge explosion in it yet. Certainly accounting for a growing percentage of the traffic they're seeing. I mean, I think from our perspective, we would treat it as reasonably high intent. I mean, generally the traffic that's coming from LLMs is people saying like, again, it's very similar to search traffic. It's people saying, I'm after something specific. Give me some suggestions of places that sell it, and they'll come through. So we'd probably treat it in a similar way. But as I say, it's not come up too much, but it's certainly, as I say, internally, it's a constant test and learn process. So we'll be looking at our data and examining it and seeing, based on our predictions. We use a lot of control group testing to test for things. So it's a lot of holdout tests. So we'll be saying like, yeah, if we try applying a rule that says, let's treat LLM traffic in this way, are we right in our then conclusion of what's happening? Like, what is then happening? Is that more likely to buy or less likely to buy that traffic? So it's taking into account all those different signals and trying to work out what is the right weighting to give them. And again, that's why AI comes in, because it can learn those things a lot faster than we can do on a one-to-one sort of manual basis. So yeah, it's something we've started to think about, but yeah, it's not showing anything particularly strong at the moment, other than it's quite similar to search traffic in being a bit higher in intent if it is coming from an LLM. But yeah, it's a really good question.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Are there any more questions or anything else you want to add based on what's been discussed so far? Tim, I know you run a Shopify agency. You might have something you want to jump in with if you're.
We love Shopify. We love Shopify. Great platform.
Whilst you're all having a think, there's so many things that I've taken from this session. I'm glad we've got the recording so I can review it again. But the Control C aspect, I didn't realise that could be tracked. I mean, it's obvious now you say it, but that's something I do all the time. I'm terrible for retailers, always looking for a better deal. So yeah, having that sort of showing the intent there and having a discount maybe dropped in once I've done that, that'll be perfect. So that's it.
People in the industry, so to speak, are always the worst people, because we know all the stuff, so we do it all. We absolutely go, where's the discount code? Where's the email sign up so I can get my discount? Where's this? Could do a quick search. We're just the worst people at that kind of thing. So
well, I'm doing it right now actually with a tech tool. It's an AI recorder, and I'm clicking perfectly on the emailers to make sure that they know I've got intent to buy and just waiting for the right discount. I've got them up to 10% so far.
Okay, there you go.
Let's see if we get a bit more.
Yes. My favorite one is I'm actually just moving away, but I used Evernote for many years, and every time you go to cancel Evernote, it immediately goes, "Do you want 50% off?" And it's just like, what is the point of this? Just give me half price from the start. Excuse me, give me half price from the start, and then go
Most SaaS do that.
Every time.
Yeah, I got that on LinkedIn, like Sales Navigator, the premium.
Yeah.
I went to cancel it, and it's like, you have 50% off.
Yeah, goodness sake.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the right offer from them as well. It changes almost daily.
Yeah. Crazy.
Anyone else got any other questions before we end the session, or anything they want to add about their experience? Maybe they got you've had different experiences with discounts and promotions and different points of view.
Yeah, always happy to. It comes up. I've got a lot of retailers who speak to you are like, we just don't do them, and it's it's fine, okay. I'm actually at a conference today. It's e-commerce forum conference, and I was speaking to someone who works for a retailer, and their AOV is like £2,000. Their jewelry, they sell jewelry, and it's like very expensive, thousands of pounds per item. And yeah, obviously for them, it's like we don't really ever discount. Apparently, Kate Middleton wore some of their jewelry, and since then they've been doing very, very well. And it's like, okay, so it's like fine to say that, and it's like, yeah, we probably can't help you, but there's a lot of retailers who are in that position of they've got a bit addicted to promotions, or they don't really think them through very well. So it's just giving them a chance to use them a bit.
Yeah, it can be a brand positioning stance, so at least outwardly, and maybe it's not always 100% true, but say taking the stance of we don't discount, we don't promote, and maybe working out different ways to add value. Particularly, I mean, again, thinking about agencies, maybe it'll be adding extra things, which is kind of a discount. We could do your, I don't know, email marketing for you as well as the brand and the website. You are still discounting, but you're not using that word. You're not promoting in a different way. You're saying we can add another service. So maybe retailers could do the same.
Yeah, it's an incentive. Yeah, and that's fine. That's what we find, and that's what we find often quite scary. Is just that a retailer hasn't thought about what their position on discount is. They just do it, and you're like, your position could be we never discount. That's absolutely fine. At least you've thought about it. But if your thing is we just use them randomly and we don't ever really think about what impact it has on the business overall, then that's where you've got a problem and where you need to just decide, like, yes, we do use discounts sometimes. We don't. We use them all the time. There are low value retailers who just discount everything all the time. We can't really help them because that's what TK Maxx. I always love sitting next. I love TK Maxx. I sat next to a guy TK Maxx at a conference, and he was saying, like, our business model is we buy it. It doesn't matter about the margin because we sell at volume. We just buy it. We sell it. If it doesn't sell in 6 weeks, we drop the price. Doesn't sell in 6 weeks, we drop the price, and that is it. And I love the brutal simplicity of that business model in terms of that's what we do. We just churn it out, and it absolutely works for us, and we make enough money. It's like, yeah, there you go.
Well, with my branding hat on, I like that because it's a position, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
not
exactly.
necessarily the right one, but there are
Yeah.
lots of different business models
Yeah.
for every sector.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend the other day about Iceland, and they just moved to this country and they don't know the shop Iceland. And I was like, well, it's going to be cheap and you're going to get discounts.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's good, but
Yeah.
you know what you're getting. And obviously the other end of the spectrum, Waitrose or M&S or whatever,
Yeah.
they've got different value proposition. So they
Yeah.
will use discounting in a different way and
Mm.
perhaps hold off.
And they understand it. The really interesting one recently is Temu, who our CEO is a bit obsessed with Temu. But they've rewritten the rule book. I mean, he signed up for, and I think he signed up their WhatsApp thing, and he gets like 10 WhatsApps a day from them saying, "Here is this discounted. Here is this 50% off. Here's this 40% off." They are, taking discounting to a level it has never reached before. It's absolutely crazy. But yeah, but it's really interesting, as you say, to see all these just different approaches, different models, and they work in their own way. There's space for everyone, as you say.
I've got a question before we wrap up,
Oh,
unless there's other ones. You may have covered this already, but as I say, it was whistle stop, and I'll be watching recording again. Any key mistakes we should avoid, particularly on behalf of the retailers? Any key promotional mistakes?
I think the thing is just like our thing is always against. I think the email sign up is a really good one. The welcome offer, just thinking through and those things a bit harder about who's going to see an offer and what the offer should be. The mistakes we see is just people, and also it's the slippery slope. And this was Radley's thing, is they saw a little bit of a dip in performance, so they just started. They said, we called us the methadone of what we did because we kind of got them unhooked from what they were doing, which is very nice. But interesting choice of metaphor. They start offering a bit of a discount, just thinking there's no harm to this. We're just doing it a little bit. But as soon as they start seeing, and I think the thing is being careful about how you report that to senior people because if you start saying like, oh, we're seeing this big improvement in conversion and AOV. And before you know it, this is often the story, is before you know it, they're offering too many discounts and they're getting stuck into that cycle. And it's then so hard to get out of it. Again, I was speaking to someone today who works for a retailer, and she was saying that their solution, they decided to just try and go cold turkey, and it tanked their conversion and AOV, and their CEO just absolutely panicked and was like, right, we've just got to go straight back into the discounts again. So you've got to be, so if you are hooked, it's like, how can you be quite carefully, start making some decisions about who doesn't, how you start to wean yourself off, who doesn't see promotions. Start with a small number of like, let's just try not showing it in this circumstance. But yeah, it's a very difficult habit to break. So if you can avoid, we speak to a lot of D2C kind of startups, and my advice to them would always be, I wouldn't start discounting that, very freely and openly. I would start very carefully thinking about how you approach it from the start, so you don't get yourself into that problem. That's probably what I'd say. Avoid, watch out for the slippery slope.
Yeah, I can imagine. Keep an eye on it. Obviously, relate that back to the profit margins, the bottom line at the end of the day. Make sure it doesn't become an expectation.
Exactly.
Even the world's biggest brands, I get emails from Peloton, and that's had its ups and downs over the years. But even how established it is, I'm always surprised how many discounts they offer. Quite large ones, and even today I had a couple of big ones. It's like, wow, you're such an established brand and well known and doing such amazing things, but equally having to keep pushing forward and get new customers. So the pressure's on.
Exactly, and it's always about that perception thing. That's brand is about that perception of how much you're worth at the end of the day. And every time you do a discount, you're slightly chipping away at that. So yeah, you've just got to be incredibly careful.
Well, for me personally, like, I've had a Peloton for a couple of years, and I love it. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Talking to other people, I think that they seem to have a negative opinion of it for some reason. I'm always surprised, but when I see the discounts,
Yeah.
that sort
Yeah.
of backs that up, and it makes
Yeah.
me think, well, am I am I seeing something no one else is?
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like a lot of people aren't
Yeah.
down that route of
Yeah.
Peloton being the way forward.